Hello, Kieran from Speaking Spurs to talk you through my thoughts on the game against Manchester City. And did we get lucky? A little bit. Did we play well? At times. But look, if you'd have been offered a draw before that game at the Etihad, especially with the players that we were going to have to put out there, you'd have probably chewed my arm off to take it. So we'll go for a little bit about the game, thoughts on the players, but just before that, we'll talk a bit about the teams in and around us. So Aston Villa, who obviously beat us in the last game, they got a 2-2 draw with Bournemouth away, so that keeps us the same distance of points away. Chelsea picked up a 3-2 win against Brighton. That's a big win for them. Liverpool in another thriller this weekend, 4-3 win over Fulham, and then obviously Manchester City drew with us. Arsenal the day before got a 2-1 win over Wolves, and then Newcastle with a 1-0 win over Manchester United. The rest of the games don't really affect us as such, but yeah, they're the main ones there. So for the Premier League table, what that means, looking at that, is Arsenal remain top on 33 points, Liverpool second, 31 points, Manchester City on 30 points in third, and then Villa in fourth on 29, and us in fifth on 27, with Newcastle just 1 point away from us in sixth, and then Manchester United on 24 points sitting in seventh. So still fairly tight in terms of that. So we're still only 3 points off City after that game, 4 off Liverpool and 6 off of Arsenal. So yeah, we're still very much in the hunt despite the little hiccup, blip, whatever you want to call it, the amount of injured players. So my thoughts on the game. It was a bit of a strange one. We knew going into the game, obviously we had more injury problems. Bentancur, after 8-9 months recovering from that horrible injury that he had, come back, got some minutes here and there, went away on international duty, played really well, started the game very well against Aston Villa, was probably the best player on the pitch at the time, only to be chopped down, and he's now out for another 2.5 months. But hey, we thought Bazouma's coming back. So with Bazuma coming back, you'd think that, right, he's served his suspensions now. He's got no worries of that yellow card on his shoulder that if he picks up one more, he's out. So he can start afresh. Didn't really happen, though. He had a very, very mixed bag of a game. And we'll talk more about him individually when I talk about players. But very mixed from him. Once again, it's a makeshift defence with 4 fullbacks in the back line. So it's hard to criticise too much on the individual performances. We can only criticise a manager for that. But no fit first team centre-backs this time round, because Eric Dyer was apparently, I don't know how true it is, he was out of the squad completely due to a little niggle that he picked up in training. So he wasn't available at all anyway. I don't think he would have gone with him, to be honest, because of the pace of Haaland or any of the attacking players that they've got coming forward. So I still think he'd have stuck with the same back four regardless. But my thoughts on the game, first half, I thought we were very cagey. I know we got a nice early goal, but that's been a feature of us this time round, whereas against Conte we used to get really late goals. So I'm not surprised by that whatsoever. Then obviously we had the own goal from Sonny, and I think that kind of changed things a little bit for us. The nerves started to creep in of, it's Manchester City, it's going to be a really difficult game from here on out. But it's always going to be difficult against a team like Manchester City. So I felt like the rest of the first half we were kind of playing within ourselves. There was a lot of misplaced passes, especially in our own half. With a team like Manchester City, you can't afford to do that. It just invited them on time and time and time again, which really didn't help us whatsoever. There was players taking unnecessary time on the ball, risks on the ball, Bazuma being one of them, which we'll definitely talk about his second half performance. So the first half I just felt like we weren't playing the way we should. It was very rushed passing. It was either people taking too long on the ball to find an option, or people just forcing a pass rather than playing a pass with conviction. So it took a little team talk from Ange Postecoglou to turn things around. Brian Hill coming off with Højbjerg coming on to add a bit of experience into that midfield, and it was completely different. I think the second half in total we actually had more possession than them. So from the first half we definitely didn't. Overall, it was very much Man City and us just trying to break when we could. But it's weird because we weren't doing what we usually do against teams in previous seasons under like the Conte style, where we kind of changed it because of who we were playing. We were still trying to play the Ange way. We just were forcing it rather than playing it naturally. So the half-time team talk along the lines was just telling them to go out and play football. Like, you're good enough players. You're as good as these players that you're up against. And that seemed to work. The substitution, I think it helped add a calm head in there with good experience. So yeah, moving into the second half, much better. The goals, it's one of them. Like, Vicario on the day made some very good saves. The goals, I think we just give him too much space. The first one was obviously Sonny, own goal. Very unlucky for him. So let's talk about the players themselves. Vicario in goal made an early save from Doku, who actually I thought is an exceptional player, Doku, keeping Jack Grealish out of the side at the moment. Couldn't do anything about Son's deflected own goal. And that was mainly down to his positioning. I felt like maybe his positioning could have been a little bit better in that situation, but nonetheless, you're not expecting one of your own players to turn it into the back of the net. Flying save to deny Silva early in the second half to make up for his own loose intercepted pass. It was a terrible pass out, but he's just lucky he's a very good shot stopper at the end of the day. Nothing much he could do about Grealish netting at the back post. He didn't actually have a lot to do in the game, and really couldn't get near any of the finishes that happened. So for him, kind of did what he needed to for most of it. And when he did make a mistake, he was the one that kind of made up for it. Porro at right back. He played a lovely ball over the top for Johnson in the first half. One of the most improved players, without a doubt, under Postecoglou. Really, really worked hard throughout the game. So pleased with him. Emerson Royale at centre-back. It was a difficult day for Royale, let's put it that way. But it's difficult for any centre-back up against Erling Haaland and Julian Alvarez, let alone somebody that's not a centre-back at all. Made an absolute mess 12 minutes in to a loose ball, and then was fortunate that Haaland missed a near open goal. It was actually terrible from Haaland. He just opened his foot out, didn't catch it right. Made a couple more sloppy moments in the first half. One loose pass that actually resulted in Alvarez hitting the left-hand post. Did a lot of really good things defensively when our backs were against the wall, but he also gave the ball away a lot in this game, and he's not the best under pressure, and sometimes he just tries really fancy stuff. And I think a few people have been talking about this online. I know they were on We Are Tottenham TV, talking about the fact that he has these moments of genius in defence. He has the skills of a Brazilian player at times, but just doesn't know how to use them effectively all the time. Does them in really weird moments in games where he's not playing well, and then in games where he is playing well defensively, he does really silly things on the ball, which is, he's a bit frustrating for me, but his defensive work usually good. Ben Davis, not the tallest, not the quickest, but really battled away at the back once again for us. Mr. Reliable, I like to call him. Won an important diving header that actually ended up setting us away for the Lo Celso goal. So really important there. Destiny Doggy at left back picked up a booking once again, but he managed to control himself throughout the game. The booking didn't really affect him. That was for a late challenge on Phil Foden. Fairly mature performance from him. Not his usual attacking display, but difficult team to be up against. And because we kept losing the ball so much, it gave him a very difficult time to be able to go forward. Moving into the midfield, Yves Bissouma. It's so frustrating that since the red card, he's not been the same player. And then we thought, because he picked up that final yellow card, had the suspension, he'd come back and be the Bissouma that we saw in the first 10 games. But really, really sloppy day for him. Gave possession away a couple of times in the first half. And then the absolute howler, we got ourselves back into the game with the lovely Lo Celso goal. Postecoglou removes Lo Celso, our most creative midfielder, to bring on Skippy, to add some fresh energy, some hard tackling, keep us in the game. It didn't really change the shape too much because we're still going to play the Ange way. And then Bissouma goes and tries to take on 3 players. He's got 2 players outside him on the left that he could play an easy pass to. Even when he turned inside, there was a ball that he could have played forward. In all fairness, the more difficult ball. But when he turned inside, his just awareness was not there. Cuts back inside, past the first two players, lovely. His touch is too heavy that takes it straight into the third player. But I think once you've just got back into the game, your head needs to be screwed on and you need to play the possession percentages. And for that, it had to be the ball out left, which then would have gone down the line. We continue with the ball. You could see it in his eyes when he got taken off that he was disappointed, not because of being subbed, but because he knew that he'd cost us in that moment. So yeah, a bad day for him. I'm hoping we see the better side of him soon and he can shrug this one off, because ultimately we got a result out of the game. Dejan Kulusevski. Oh, I'm loving this guy playing further back in the midfield, just because of his tenacity, his ability to hold the ball, his running. I just think it suits him a bit more in this system. I think out wide he sometimes gets a little bit... They give him the ball a lot out there, but because he's so wide when he receives it, he's quite far away from everyone still and there's a lot to do. And because he likes to cut back in on the left, it becomes very predictable. Whereas when he's in the middle, he's got the ability to slalom in and out each way. He's got people inside him and outside him. So, yeah, he played a quick ball over the top into Son's run for an early assist. Third assist in a row at the Etihad, followed by his third goal at the Etihad, which we might as well now call the deck he had. But for him, another all-action performance in the deeper role. Deservedly grabbed the dramatic equaliser late on. Really powerful header, completely floored Nathan Ake, who came on as a late sub. So yeah, he's only the second player in the Premier League in the history since Danny Murphy to score away at the reigning champions in 3 consecutive seasons. And he had a bit to say after the game. We'll talk about that in a bit. Then the other man in midfield, the man that's come in to replace James Maddison during his injury, Giovanni Lo Celso, started really strongly. He actually gave away the free kick that City took the lead from. However, he more than made up for that with his beautiful low curling effort in the second half to make it 2 goals in 2 games from him. And his second goal against City. Worked really hard in the 77 minutes that he was on the pitch. I felt like his second half performance was much better than the first, but I think that was more down to the team playing better as a whole as well. And he's definitely been making a difference for us in the games we're seeing him, and hopefully his confidence is growing. And he's got a long time until Maddison is back anyway with the busy Christmas schedule. So he's definitely going to get more game time, and yeah, may it continue. Then on to the front 3. So Brennan Johnson on the right made an early sprint down the right, which ended with a low cross, just deflected past City's right-hand post. Didn't make too much of an important impact really until late in the game with a perfect run across for Kulusevski to head home. So a bit of a mixed bag from him. Very much like the team was suffering misplaced passes and things like that. It was harder for the front 3 to get in the game because we kept losing it so much in midfield. But yeah, I feel like Brennan Johnson is kind of moving at the trajectory I thought he would with the disruptions and injuries that he's had. Moving on to Brian Hill on the left. Again, for him, a very mixed game. We're seeing the best and worst of him at all times. And I don't want to be too critical of him because he came up against Kyle Walker, who is a very, very good right back and very, very strong. And Brian Hill is on the weaker side of, Premier League players. But I feel like at times he held his own. He couldn't really take him on. But one thing he's very good at, he's got a low centre of gravity and his turning ability is brilliant. So yeah, he did very well on the edge of our box to release Kulusevski in the build-up to our early goal. And that was because of that low centre of gravity, spinning around, playing the early pass, which was very good. He then seized onto a loose ball from Silva, but his low cross was then sent behind the City goal, and Son was absolutely raging because, and this is the thing sometimes with Brian, he doesn't make the quickest decisions. And in that moment, I was screaming for him to play the ball. There was a clear gap. Then by the time he played it, there was sort of like the gap between the defenders and Son was closing. He could only hold it for so long. So that was a bit of a poor decision, but he did well to make the interception in the first place. Struggled really to trouble Walker too many times, and he came off at half time to replace by Højbjerg, and I don't really think it's because he had a bad performance. I think we just needed things to be a bit more experienced. Look, we tried it, and I do think he's going to get more game time coming up, probably a little bit less with Richarlison back. But let's move on to we've got to move on to Sonny first. How can I forget? Loves a goal at the Etihad, does Sonny. And then he headed Kulusevski's pass into his stride before hitting a shot under Ederson. In all fairness, Ederson should have done better and it shouldn't have been a goal, but nonetheless it was. Played a couple of lovely passes on the spin to get us up the pitch in the first half. Was unfortunate that City's first half free kick came off of him and then deflected off the thigh into his own net. He then grabbed an assist in the second half with that little touch to Lo Celso. Nothing special in the assist. It was just a little knock on. Without that own goal, it was a pretty decent performance from him, really. And again, another one. It was a struggle to get him in the game at times because we kept giving the ball away in midfield. So, from the starting lineup, overall, mostly they played okay once they started the second half and passing to each other rather than to Manchester City players. Of the substitutes, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, the one that came on at half-time for Brian Hill, battled away in the centre of the park, using all of that experience that he can to break up City's attacks. It helped us to get more control at times. There was actually one thing I do appreciate is if the ball goes out of play, Højbjerg has this lovely ability just to go, I'm going to go to ground here. Just going to take a little breather, pretend I've got a little injury. It just slows things down. There was one moment, the ball went out for a corner, and instead of allowing City to take it quickly, he just went to the ground, got up, pretended to shake his foot off, and just that little 30 seconds to 45 seconds gave us a breather, recollect ourselves, get in position for the corner. He really helps us in those situations, and he hasn't really put up a fuss with the lack of minutes that he's had, and whenever he's come on, he's been the ultimate professional. Oliver Skipp came on, he played his part in the equaliser, and for him, again, it's one of those, he was brought into a difficult situation because ultimately he's brought on to help see the game out, and then Bazuma does that stupid bit of madness that cost us a goal. And then obviously Skippy's not the guy that's going to get us back up the pitch to score. One of them. Richarlison, who we were told would only get 5 or 10 minutes before the game anyway, made his return for a little run out, a few minutes. And then lovely for him, and it was late in the game, Jamie Donnelly of our academy came on for his debut in added time, and what a place to come on, especially with the way the game ended. So that would have been a nice experience for him. No real experience gained in terms of playing, but it would have been nice to be around the first team properly on a match day and then get onto the pitch himself, so the Tottenham fans that did travel could give him a nice round of applause. So that's my thoughts on the players. Let's talk a little bit about what the manager said. Were you pleased with the spirit? And he said, yes, pleased for the players' effort they put in, got their reward, because sometimes you don't. Like Aston Villa, we played very well, didn't get the rewards. First half, lucky to still be in it, and he's absolutely right. City should have buried a few of them chances. They hit the post a couple of times. We let them in way too often, but he said we certainly had enough chances to do so as well. There was no real conviction or belief in what we were doing in the first half. We gave the ball away a lot. We hung in there, I guess. He was basically saying it was similar to the game against Aston Villa. We sort of didn't do what we needed to do at times, and ultimately that cost us. But he said the good thing was, though, City never got full control of the game. We made it uncomfortable for them in the second half, so he was pleased for the effort. Talking about the change at half-time, he said, I think it helped. Pierre was excellent in the second half. His experience out there really helped. As a group, we had a lot more conviction about our football, just passing it and not second-guessing ourselves and being hesitant with our passes like we did in the first half. And he was saying, look, I'm on the touchline and everything looks easy, but when you're out there and facing a world-class team in a venue where they don't give up too many things, by that he means points, he's basically saying it's understandable that this happens. He was asked about, sort of like the character of the team after losing 3 in a row. It would have been really easy to collapse out there, especially with the inexperience of this team together as a collective. But we never really saw any signs that they were going to collapse. I thought that as a collective, and this will do them the world of good, coming up against City after losing 3 on the bounce against weaker opposition than Manchester City. This will let them know that they can do it. They are good enough to do it. And it would have been really easy in this game for Ange Postecoglou to just go, do you know what? We'll try and tighten up a little bit. But he didn't. He went out there with the inexperienced lineup again and said, no, you go for it. You play my way. And the fact that they've managed to do it well against Manchester City in moments, especially the second half, will give them the belief that they can do it against anyone. What else? Talking about the nice exchange with Pep Guardiola, he's basically saying Guardiola's always been complimentary about him, yada, yada, yada. You can tell they like each other's playing styles. When he was asked about the strange decision from the referee to play advantage after Haaland was flattened, and then got up and played the through ball to Grealish, only for once it got there, and Grealish did steal a yard on our 3 defenders that were back there at the time, to then call it up. Now, look, in the eyes of the game, the referee did nothing wrong, because it's up to him how long advantage is played for, albeit it was played for about 2 seconds. What I will say is, in the referee's mind, he might have thought once the ball was played, maybe the offside flag was going to go up for Grealish, which then he can't pull it back. Or, I think it was Ben Davies had actually made up some ground by the time he took his second touch. So there's an element of thinking, well, if I let him shoot, I can't then bring it back. So I'm not really sure what was going through his mind, but no doubt it helped us. I personally think if that had happened to us, I'd be furious. Haaland then gets a yellow card for that, protesting, and it's made itself to be a meme so far, quite funny. But yeah, it was one of them days, wasn't it, where we showed what we can do once the belief is there. We've actually showed that despite the lack in depth in defence, every other department can still function. The midfield can win the ball. We can play well. It was just kind of individual errors that cost us. An own goal from Sonny. Bizuma taking on people in a stupid place. You know? Lo Celso making a challenge that gives away a free kick. So they all came from... They didn't really come from open play of City being great. We kind of allowed them to have the goals. So, you know, I think we could potentially go on a run, start picking up points again, and we definitely need to now, because with Aston Villa dropping points and only getting the one the same as we did, it's kept us in the hunt. And the fact that it was against City, that game, it meant we only stay 3 points away from them. So we're in a very good position still, and we've got players coming back. Bizuma no doubt will get better, because he needs to start playing more. We know Højbjerg is great cover when needed. Brian Hill will grow in confidence, I'm sure. Johnson just needs to get a run of games. Richarlison will be getting back to fitness soon. Kulusevski's found himself a second position in a Spurs shirt, which gives us way more options to rotate. And Lo Celso scoring goals. So, all in all, in an attacking sense, we're still very good. The way I actually look at it sometimes is we've got more attackers than we have defensive players now, whereas what we're used to under Conte was like pretty much everybody defended and just breaking, whereas now we attack way more than we defend, and that's the way it should be, because attack is the best form of defence. So, you know, West Ham up next, not going to be an easy game, definitely not, but it is at home, that should definitely help us. So I'd expect we do pick 3 points up in that game, which is going to be massive, massive, massive for us heading into this month, because after West Ham, we've then got Newcastle. Luckily, that's at home. Then we travel to Nottingham Forest, and then we have Everton at home. We've actually got a decent amount of home games coming up, so it is a chance to pick up some points and momentum once again. And we're lucky in the sense that West Ham is normally a difficult game for us anyway. It just always is. Newcastle, they are no mugs at the moment. Nottingham Forest is probably it's not the easiest, because I think Everton at home is potentially the easiest, but if you're going to get a team away at the moment, Nottingham Forest is probably one of the better teams to get. So out of that run, we have the potential to pick up maximum points in that. So we shall see, fingers crossed. But yeah, on some of the players that we're talking, I know Kulusevski was one that he was saying that he needs to score more headed goals. He gets wound up. Yeah, the players wind him up in training about it, because he's not a small lad. He is strong. He was saying about the goal, he didn't even realise it had gone in at first, because after the header he was on the floor. So he actually ended up watching a replay of the goal on his phone whilst talking to Spurs Play in an interview. And yeah, I agree, definitely should be scoring more headed goals. He's definitely a threat. But he's been playing very well in the position he's in. I'm happy with him. And then Vicario was just talking a bit about the game as well, saying like how amazing it was, the atmosphere to keep coming back in the game, and he's looking forward to Thursday. So I feel like that result is probably a real biggie, not just for the fans, but for the players themselves, to show that they can do it. So really looking forward to Thursday against West Ham. I hope you enjoyed that one there. Don't forget to leave your comments. Make sure you thumbs up, give it a like, and if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. But until next time, come on you Spurs.